that's the route that I've chosen to go down.
So obviously there was a time before, whenever you were doing punditry and you were working for Sky Sports, and before you started noticing inconsistencies with messaging about COVID or whatever. Did you feel in the pit of your soul something spiritually that beforehand ever that the system that you were working within was not clean, was not pure, did not align with your goals? Or were you spiritually blind at that stage? Or
So when I was working in the media, although I was working in it, I didn't immerse myself in it, if that makes any sense. So my day's work at Sky on a Saturday consisted of being picked up from my house here at 9:30 in the morning. I'd go to work. I'd work from 12 till 6, and at 6 o'clock there'd be a car waiting for me to drive me straight back home afterwards. So I kind of went in, did my job, got out again. I didn't spend any time really in the system, getting bogged down with the politics of the higher ups. I just went in, did my job, kept my head down. And got on with life. And yeah, I was pretty asleep up until 2020. Really, I mean, I'd had inklings of things that weren't right in the past. 9/11 never sat right with me about the story we were told about that. There was always too many inconsistencies there for me to believe the official narrative. But it's difficult. What do you do as an individual? It's hard to make a big difference when you kind of feel like you're pretty alone in your views. But it's only when things really start coming out you actually realise that a lot of people share those views, and you're not mad, and you're just a rational human being who looks at the evidence and takes a viewpoint after you've seen all the evidence, and you can disregard what's going on in the media, the mainstream media, because there's always an agenda behind all the stories that they pump out over those channels.
Yeah, 100%. And do you feel that what there's obviously something that makes you different to other people, that your image is not important, you're able to stand on principle regardless of consequence, and that's something very few people have, and it is a unique, especially in these times where social media is a thing, and it's all about self-importance, self-image, projecting the best of everything, and you're not wanting to upset the apple cart, but when something's wrong, you were willing to stand your ground and pay the consequence irrespective. And I think where you're at now in life probably is proof that if you stand on what is right, you will be provided for, you'll be looked after. You've probably seen blessings in ways you never expected.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's absolutely right. I just realised actually that I forgot to address your point about Gary Neville in your earlier question.
That's all right, with plenty of time.
So let me just go back to that, because I don't like missing out things when I've been asked questions, because people go, "Oh, well, you swerved that answer. You didn't say anything about that."
Politicians now.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be accused of being one of them.
No.
So to address your earlier point, the Gary Neville stuff, I just felt like Gary has forgotten where he's come from. He's become a bit of a champagne socialist, in my opinion. He's taken a fight on with the middle-aged white men, as he calls them, without realising that those middle-aged white men are the ones that have put him on the pedestal that he is speaking from right now. And just goes to show the type of person I think he's proved himself to be, that he's willing to basically crap on the people that put him into his position that he's in.
He's viable, and that's what separates the likes of him from yourself. You're self-aware, you know what you're about, you know what you stand for, and you know when something doesn't sit right with your soul.
Yeah,
and
I also
irrespective.
Sorry,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
the point that you made before I went back to the Gary Neville one is that I think what sets people apart that are able to do what I've done is that we have a strong mind, we have the courage of our convictions, and we don't have an ego. And I think that's what it kind of boils down to.
Yeah,
I've never really taken much notice of people's opinion of me, because I spent 17 years as a professional footballer, knowing that I was good at what I did, and yet having absolutely uh, people in the media who would be very happy to just criticise any small point about my play, and yet the reason why I was able to take that is because I understood that those people had no idea what they were talking about, because they didn't have an ounce of the talent that I had in my chosen sport, and yet here they were offering their expert opinion on what I was doing wrong. So I don't really hold much sway to those people. So I was able to brush off criticism very easily for those 17 years, and that stood me in good stead for what happened in 2020.
100%. And I don't think I'm a great believer in like predestination, and all those things shaped your person up to that point to make you be able to do that in 2020. All those things were like the training ground. You knew your skills were undeniable. And I've told you before, no fuck all about football. So I'm only going to what my mates have told me. You were a legend in the game, so like you were aware of your abilities, and
But yeah,
as you say, just
I
noise.
also had the sorry, Mark, to interrupt. I also had the courage of my convictions that when I was being pressured by the media, not so much by my agent, but definitely by the media, into them trying to get me out of Southampton and signing for a bigger club. I also had the courage of my convictions to know that no, I feel like this is the place where I belong. This is the job that I was put here to do, and I did that for my football club, and I spent my entire career fighting to keep Southampton in the Premier League. And that's what we did, and that's I'm very proud of the fact that I spent my entire football career in the top flight of English football.
And
Despite the odds
on any
saying that.
level, loyalty in any level of life is much more like precious than going with the next big thing, like signing for the next team on the way up, like being part of building something. And loyalty is worth 1,000 times more than the money side of things, in my opinion. That ethos has probably got you to many places in life that others just couldn't get to, or wouldn't even understand. Like a Gary Neville, like champion socialists, they're just not self-aware. They feel that because they now have money or like a sort of a platform or whatever, that they're above the average person. But we're all blood and flesh, and
Yeah,
we're all corrupt. We're all corrupt, and we're all searching for something. We're all looking for something, and to
I'm a
to make
great believer. I'm a great believer, Mark, in treating people the way that you want to be treated.
one
And
hundred
that's
percent, 100%, and that can include whether or not you agree or disagree with them. And
absolutely.
that's something that's greatly forgot about these days. You can't have a disagreement anymore. You apparently you want to that other person not to live or not to be around because you don't agree with their point of view. It's a very and that's all been weaponized. That's all been incrementally brought in. Like this started in the 90s. I can remember like certain elements of the wokeness started creeping in. Very subtly, and it's all done incrementally because
Yeah.
humans don't accept dramatic change.
Yeah, all that political correctness nonsense that started in the 90s, it's led us to where we are now. That was the first step towards it. And you're right, incrementally, they've just, because nobody's fought back enough against it, they've just kept taking more and taking more. And it's the boiling the ethical frog.
And nobody
situation.
ever will. Nobody ever will. Like there's not going to be like a revolution. There's not going to be. The revolution's controlled, is what I mean. Is like, so at the moment we have elements within Ireland, Northern Ireland, the United Kingdom, that have started waking up to a degree that they see that there's like political malfeasance with the mass migration, but they're focusing their energy on the migrants as opposed to the legislation, the people that introduced the legislation, and on a larger scale, like the spirit behind that's introduced that to that sphere. And like society, like I've always been a conspiracy theorist. But the older I get, it's clearly engineered. Everything is so narrative driven. It's
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
undeniable at this point.
No, 100% undeniable. Yeah.
Have you seen the video where they have like 100 different or was it hundreds? An over exaggeration. Let's say 25 different news stations on America, all reading the exact same script, word for word.
Yeah.
And
well, it was just like during COVID. About 3 or 4 months in, I think it was. Every single leader across the world who was making addresses to their nations just happened to use the phrase that we're going to build back better. And it was it was comical. If I'm honest, it was so comical, it was so obvious. It was like they were actually telling you that, look, this is a global takeover. We are all in the same club together. You're not in it, and we're going to use this little code word where we're all going to say "build back better" in our speeches, and you're just going to accept it. And people just went, "Oh, I know, it's just a coincidence." What? Really? All those people, just a coincidence? What I've learned over the last few years is there are no coincidences.
No, and I think the idea of these politicians are just buffoons, continuously making bad mistakes. Like the most visual representation of that would be Boris Johnson. Like the actual sort of visible buffoon. That's what we imagine them all as, but they're calculated, they're bought and paid for, and
yeah,
if they're in any way have any say over like the system, they're part of it, and that's why there's never any change and never any progress or any sort of like.
Anybody who's got the backbone to stand up against the system, they will use the media to destroy that person's reputation, and if that doesn't count, they'll just bump them off. Simple as that.
Yeah, so the old Jeffrey Epstein them, and there's another thing. We have like sort of revelations starting to happen within society, and all of a sudden we have like a Jeffrey Epstein case drop, and it's almost like, right, so we know that the higher ups are doing these really nefarious things, but they're like concentrating it all on just this one group of higher ups. It's just the Jewish people, or it's just the whatever. It's just Jeffrey Epstein. It's just this one nefarious character, and it's been going on since 2019. And this is not a Trump position because but it's boring now. It's clearly a distraction. Like, if there was going to be any real revelation, we would have caught it by now. It's just wheeled out every time to sort of stir up distraction, or and it's the same way. I know it's not long just passed, but the whole Charlie Kirk thing's already weaponized as well as a political infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is weaponized. Every incident is weaponized and turned in a way and spun in a way that helps the narrative of the governments or the people that control the governments, and it's become so obvious now. It's almost laughable.
So, in the United Kingdom, especially, would you say about like the working class white man, who to give Gary Neville his platform are the exact base that are manipulated at every turn throughout this country's history, especially. They were the ones sent off to die en masse on all the world wars, and there's multiple questions around those that we're not going to get into now. But it's always the working class that are the poor, the most, what you would say, like even the least of us amongst us are treated the worst, and it shouldn't be that way. We should be treating the worst off amongst us as we treat the highest amongst us. There's no, as you said, treat others as you wish to be treated, but there's nobody that truly echoes that in the public light. It's always attaching yourself to a group or to a side. There's no true everybody is equal, and that's not everybody is equal that I agree with everything that everybody says, but everybody is equal that your defender is the.
And everybody should be entitled to their own point of view. We're all different. We all got different thoughts, and yet, perfect example of that is Sky, who employed myself and Jamie Carragher. I questioned the COVID narrative, the government's COVID narrative. I also questioned why I should wear a Black Lives Matter badge on Sky, and because of those things, I got sacked. And Jamie Carragher, out of his car window, spat at a young girl in the car next to him, and he didn't get sacked. He was taken off air for a little while before the heat cooled down, and was invited back on again. And I think that tells you everything about the media and what their narrative is, and where the only people that are allowed a voice on the television are ones that are happy to go with the current theme of the day and the current narrative. And I wasn't one of those people who was prepared to do that.
Yeah, the moment you meet any resistance with that narrative, there is just utter shutdown. It's the most dangerous thing to any system that has such control is someone who still has the ability to freely think and to stand by the outcome of their thoughts, regardless of consequence. Because, in today's urge to be accepted or be popular or be an influencer or whatever, talking to somebody who started a podcast, I've no desires of being an influencer or anything. I want to bring clarity to people. I cover a wide range of topics, but ultimately, if it's not leading to redemption or it's not leading to anything good, well, what's the point?
No, absolutely right. Yeah, and that's what it's all about. People find their own way in life. They find their own journeys. I've been on quite a bumpy journey over the last few years, but that led me to find Jesus, and I couldn't be happier that it led me down that path. I really couldn't, and I would urge other people who are having similar thoughts to what I had in 2020 to just take a look into it. Go read the Bible, and just see how many prophecies were made before Jesus came, and how many of those turned out to be true. And after all these years, thousands of years, and people still can't debunk the Bible. So it is, Jesus is the
If
truth.
anything, it's being more reinforced with the historical finds that keep happening. And if you were to explain in the plainest possible terms the shift sparsely within from pre-Christ to post-Christ, what's a change for somebody who has no knowledge of faith or the Bible? What would be the description?
I would say the biggest change that I've noticed is I have no fear in my life. There is no fear. There is no stress. There is no worry, because I know that as a follower of Jesus, I will be provided for in any way that he sees fit. So that for me is the biggest change. And I know I don't fear death at all. So that's why I'm happy to speak out the way that I have done, because there are some people that have spoken out in countries around the world, and that includes leaders, and they've mysteriously gone down with some kind of illness and died pretty soon afterwards. I know that is a possibility because we're told that Christians will be persecuted for their time on earth, and I'm prepared to accept that.
It's pretty okay when you know the final outcome, isn't it?
That's 100% right.
And I have known the truth, or was exposed to the truth my entire life and fought against it. I was brought up in a traditional Christian household, and I ended up going into every vice that the world had to offer, and fruitless. Nothing plugged that hole. Nothing fed that desire. There is nothing that this world has to offer that's going to give you that contentment that you're yearning for. It's not a physical thing. And as someone who was at the sort of precipice of platform and exposure within the media through your football, how would you compare sort of the height of your fame to now, in a spiritual sense? Pros versus cons.
Yeah, no, I think even during the height of my so-called fame in the 1990s, I didn't get carried away with it. I kept my feet on the ground. I've got a fantastic family who, 3 big brothers and my mum and dad, who would never let me get too big for my boots, and I knew that, and that's always been the case. So I didn't get too high when the highs were high, and I don't get too low when the lows are low. And I think that's the be all and end all, really, is to I think was it Rudyard Kipling who said about if you can face victory and defeat and treat both of those imposters the same, then I think that's a pretty good way to live your life.
Yeah, and I've always envied people like yourself who have been able to remain neutral in the highs and the lows, because I've had a lot of propensity to get swept up in the highs and the lows, because I've been lost a lot of my life, to be honest, and it's finally nice not to be, and it's something that I couldn't have came to by myself, but clearly you had stability growing up. I would say